Mizzou fans, welcome back to the new and improved 2025 version of State of the Tigers. We have a countdown video. We have an intro screen. Unfortunately, we still just have me and Drew King to talk Mizzou sports tonight. Gabe DeArmond here with you, Drew King on the other side of your screen. And as always, we're going to start our Monday night show reminding you James Carlton's still a part of this. We want you to get in touch with our buddy James Carlton at State Farm Insurance in Webster Groves, Missouri. CarltonInsurance.net. You can give him a call at 314-961-4800. There might be a few of you after the last couple days who have some things going on with a car you might have driven off I-70 or something here in the last couple. We hope not, but it was bad outside. Drew and I can both testify that James does a fine job with insurance. You get in touch with him. He's going to give you the best rates possible. You get a quote from him, tell him you heard about him on Power Mizzou here. He's going to donate a little bit of money to Mizzou's NIL efforts. And Drew, if enough people call and get quotes from James and they get enough NIL money, maybe Dennis Gates can have players like Bruce Pearl has.
Maybe it's going to take a lot of James Carlton donations there.
Yeah, that was Mizzou. Mizzou lost 84-68 to Auburn on Saturday in the SEC opener. I am sure you guys all know about that at this point. It was, I don't know. Let's just start here, Drew. This is a little out of order of what I told you we'd talk about, but like scale of 1 to 10, your worry level for Missouri coming out of that game is what? 12.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay, what's your name on the message board?
No, for me, like that game went about exactly how you expected it to, right? You knew that Auburn was the best team in the country, and you knew Mizzou didn't have that much of a chance playing on the road. So when it got to 26, it was believable. You know, I thought they did a pretty good job in the first half, holding them to 12. And then obviously Auburn came out guns blazing in the second half. So I put it more in like the 3 or 4 range. Like I'm not too pressed about it, especially because those freshmen did a pretty good job in those last 10 minutes of shrinking the lead down a little bit. So I think that in the grand scheme of things, that one's not going to matter too much on the resume.
Yeah, I'm with you. Probably a 3 to 4 is what I was going to say. And the reason is simply because I do think it said a lot more about Auburn than it did about Missouri. Now, if you ask me what's the disappointment level, like I think it's fair for Missouri fans to be disappointed that they didn't, I guess, overachieve what your expectations were, right? Your expectations were, hey, they're probably going to get beat pretty bad. They got beat pretty bad. The last time we had those expectations, they came out and beat Kansas. So like some have said, it's allowed to go be a little more competitive than Missouri does. I think if I have something out of that game that, like, I don't think it's a long-term thing, but that on that day I'm disappointed in, the guys that Missouri needs to show up just flat out did not show up in that game. I mean, like, I think we saw the limitations of what Mark Mitchell is. He's a pretty good player. When he goes up against a guy like Janai Broome, he cannot be a star, I don't think.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think specifically, too, he's a guy who really relies on being physical and being able to back down guys in the post. And you're not going to be able to do that against Janai Broome and Dylan Cardwell. Like, those guys are way too big for Mark Mitchell to be doing that too. There's going to be other matchups where it'll suit him better, but I think that in addition to Mizzou kind of switching everything and Auburn repeatedly attacking any mismatch they could get on Janai Broome instead of, just trying to stick Mark Mitchell with him. I think that he got pretty outclassed there. The whole starting five did.
Yeah, I want to remind you guys, and I should have said this at the beginning. If you got comments, if you got questions, put them in the chat. We'll either get to them throughout the course of the show or save them up for the second half, whatever. But anything you've got to say, throw in the chat there, and we will get to it.
This at the start.
Oh, there you go, Drew. The show has officially started. It is officially 2025. Drew, shout out the party popper. But put the comments in the chat, like the channel, subscribe, do all those things that help us on YouTube. But Mark Mitchell, not the only. I mean, look, not a great game, obviously, but he had plenty of company. Like Ant Robinson, man, are we worried?
We're a little worried. So I think that the Illinois and Auburn matchup specifically were not great for Ant, right? Like Kylan Boswell, one of the best defenders in the country at that guard spot and really physical, right? Auburn, really, really physical. And both teams do a pretty good job of taking care of the ball. So you're not going to see Ant be as disruptive as usual. I think he immediately got into foul trouble, which isn't surprising. You look at the next couple of games, though, I think that Ant should have a little bit of a bounce back, right? So I'm going to pin it more on that. Obviously, we've seen him be a lot better the first, 11, 12 games of the season, something like that. So, yeah, I think that it hasn't been a great showing for him, but I'm expecting a bounce back. I'm not too concerned with Ant.
Andrew, we appreciate the donation to the Drew Party Popper Fund, so he can go out and buy more when he eventually runs out. I'm convinced Drew's never running out of these things. He's got 800 of them just stashed under his bed or something. But Andrew, appreciate that. We never ask for super chats, but always appreciate it, guys, and we'll make sure to get those comments and questions priority throughout the course of the show. So I'm going to take blame for Ant Robinson because Drew, I've been skeptical. You've been on the Ant Robinson bandwagon, and I was not last year. I said it stressed me out to watch him play basketball, and it still does a little bit. And then during this start, when everybody was all in on Ant, I was still a little bit, I don't know yet. And then I bought in. And as soon as I bought in, it just went off the rails the last two games. So this is completely my fault. If I go back to saying I don't know if Ant Robinson's actually good at basketball, he might be really good.
See, I thought it was me because I wrote the 4,000-word feature on him, and then eventually, immediately, he gets played off the floor. He did miss the Alabama State game. I wonder if the illness, he's working his way back from that. That's a possibility. But again, I just think he's been up against some really, really good guards in the country.
Right. And so you understand why he has taken a little bit of a step back, but also if he wants to be the player he wants to be, if Missouri wants to be the team it wants to be, well, these are the guys you got to go do it against. I mean, it can't just be we're really good against the teams that aren't nearly as good.
Yeah, absolutely. When I talked to CY for that story, he was saying there shouldn't be a night where Ant doesn't have, 8 deflections, right? And he hasn't been that guy. You don't have to be 200 pounds to get your hand on the ball or to tip a pass, right? And that hasn't been the case in either of the Illinois or the Auburn game. So it's just I think he's gotten down on himself too, maybe a little bit, and maybe that's contributed to it. But you're right, he has to be better regardless of who the opponent is.
Yeah, Billy, if you can flash Blu-ray's comment back up real quick. This just needs Mark Mitchell needs to shoot 7 or 8 threes a game. Never seen a smoother stroke. Look, he's a good basketball player. Mm-hmm. But at some point, Mark Mitchell has to understand why every team leaves him wide open. They want him to shoot that shot.
I think the explanation there would be Dennis Gates also wants him to shoot that shot.
But he can't, man. It's got to stop. This is not going to be Kobe Brown's senior year. This is not suddenly a bad three-point shooter becomes a great one. He's just not a good three-point shooter.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I would also tell him to stop taking that shot. But I don't think that they're going to. Yeah.
So who I would tell to start taking this shot? We discussed it during the game on Saturday. Why does Tamar Bates refuse to shoot from the three-point line?
Man, that is one that we've got to dig into a little bit more because you can't be I'm 2 3-pointers away from being a 50, 40, 90 guy if you're only going to take threes when you have 5 seconds to get it off. Like there were a couple of times against Auburn, and I know he was 0 for 4 from 3 for the game, but
I don't care.
Yeah, like Dennis Gates' whole thing. Dennis Gates has been telling Tamar Bates to shoot more since he stepped on campus. So that's something that like Tamar could realistically be a 15 to 18 points a night kind of guy if he was more assertive, hunting out his own looks and not being afraid to pull up from deep. And he just hasn't been.
There were a couple times that he did have Jason. I love the line drive 3-pointer. It's an excellent shot. They should take more. But like there were a couple times where he did have about 2 seconds and he still didn't shoot it. He waited for the guy to close out and he drove. And it's the difference between him being a good player and being like an all SEC player.
Yeah.
If he could hit 2 threes a game, like that dude is a top 5, 6, 7 scorer in this league. And it makes the other team respect it, because right now, who on this team do you fear at the 3-point line if you're the opponent?
Caleb Grill on
No, right now, because you don't fear Caleb Grill right now.
No, not right now. I would say Trent Pierce probably, maybe Jacob Cruz. Oh, and Marquez Warwick. I would fear Marquez Warwick.
Okay, Marquez Warwick might be number 1 on that list. The problem is we're not sure where he sits in the rotation.
Yeah.
I don't know, like Trent Pierce and Jacob Cruz, I understand we've seen him make some, but to me, those are not guys where if you're doing the Mizzou scouting report, they're in your top 4 or 5. You know, they're just not the biggest part of the game plan. So, but that's kind of the point here, right? That the guys that Missouri needed to be good at Auburn were not good. And so with about, I want to say it was about 13 minutes left, and I'm not sure that's exactly right. First of all, I want to know, did you understand the reference I made with Dennis Gates' message to his team when I texted you and Eli Hoff about what Dennis Gates was telling his team? Do you remember it?
I don't remember the text. What was the text?
Okay. So I looked at the lineup on the floor and I sent Drew and Eli Hoff a text and I said, this is Dennis Gates telling his starters, F you, Jobu, help me now. I do it myself. That was Pedro Serrano. Did you get the reference?
I did not get the reference.
Go watch Major League.
Okay.
If you have not seen Major League, we got to discuss your future employment. But but that was what I thought. It was like Dennis just looked down and said, "All right, well, look, this game's over. This isn't going to work. It's your guys' fault we got here, and I don't want you to be on the floor anymore. Like, I would rather us lose by 40 with guys who are going to give it more than you guys have given."
Yeah, I also agree with the decision, right? Because at that point, it's like, we're already down 26. What else do we have to lose here? Let's get the young guys out here. Let them get their first taste of SEC play. And they ended up playing better, right? Like, that was the eye-opening part, was you guys got outperformed by the first-year players who've never experienced this before. So, like, I thought that it was a good decision by Dennis Gates. I think that game could probably end up being the wake-up call that the starting, 8 guys needed heading into this week, where like they're going to have to win these games, right? These are 2 really important matchups. And if they play like they did against Auburn, I'm not feeling great about their chances, even though they're playing, not the best teams in the SEC.
Right. And we'll get to those games. And Crump points out what I thought was a big early play, too. The Mark Mitchell 4-point play. I pointed that out in the game thread, and people on the board said it's only 1 extra point. I said, yeah, but it's the momentum of that play that just killed you, that you can't do it. But so we're talking about the guys that came in, and it was Warwick, it was Honor Boateng, it was Marcus Allen. I think Pierce was out there. I can't remember for sure. Maybe Cruz. But it was like, how much stock do you put in that? In what they did in the last 12 minutes?
So I wouldn't say like 0, because it was still Auburn's guys, right? It was Tahad Pettiford,
Right.
it was Janai Broome. They were clearly taking their foot off the pedal, though, right? And so
Yes.
I wonder if like they were trying things out that they wouldn't normally do in that type of a situation. And had it ever gotten down to single digits, like I think we would have seen Auburn get right back into the swing of things. But I thought it was a good sign, though. Like I thought Marcus Allen really not necessarily held his own against Janai Broome, but he didn't care that he was going up against the best player in the country. Like, and he had some moments against him there. I thought Marquez Warwick, somebody mentioned it earlier, he needs more minutes. He looked awesome. Gabe, I don't know if you know this. I found this stat earlier. He's got a 6-to-1 assist to turnover ratio.
Wow.
Like, and he's not throwing out dimes left and right, but like he's been their best playmaker from that standpoint. I thought T.O. Barrett looked pretty good. Honor Boateng had almost a dunk, almost a poster on somebody. Like there were some decent moments in there for those guys. And so I think that speaks to just kind of the depth that the team has. I think that if and when they need one of those guys, that's a pretty positive sign to me.
And that's why I think it matters, because the only weapon a coach really has is the bench, right? Especially in this day and age where the guys are making a lot of money and all that. The only weapon you have is playing time. Well, now what Gates has is living, breathing proof. If you starting five come out and you're down 15-6 to LSU, like I've got guys who have done this. I can put that. None of you are irreplaceable. Tamar Bates, I'm fine with you sitting on the bench next to me for 25 minutes because I've got a guy who can do what you do. Mark Mitchell, I don't need you. I've got a guy. Now, long term, he's going to need those guys. He knows it. They know it. But on any given night, if one of those guys doesn't have it, Dennis now has a bunch of guys that he can say, look, I've seen this guy do it. I'm fine with putting him out there.
Yeah. Just to go back to Tamar Bates, what's really interesting is that Dennis Gates has had guys who will easily take 10 3-pointers in a game, right?
Yes.
Demoy Hodge will do it. Caleb Grill will do it. I bet you Marquez Warwick would do it if he got the opportunity. Tamar Bates is good enough to warrant 10 threes a game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what his career high is, but like it can't be more than like 5 for attempts.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like I think that if he's going to be somebody who like they're clearly leaning on and he's not doing the job, I think absolutely you're right. They have guys who can step up instead.
Yeah. And Dan saying, T.O. Barrett dribbles far too much. Look, T.O. Barrett has a ways to go, right? Like he's going to have to be able to shoot the ball at some point to be a legitimate point guard in this league. But like we didn't think he was going to play this year. We thought he would probably redshirt this year, and he's far ahead of where I expected him to be. So that counts for something. Okay, so we started out saying, look, our panic level is 3 or 4, and that might even be a little high. I think a big part of that is because of what else happened to the SEC on Saturday. I mean, home teams went 7-1, and the average margin of victory was a little over 20 points. And that's partly because Florida kept it close and only lost by 6 at Kentucky. I know you probably didn't watch necessarily a ton of the rest of it, but what jumped out to you in the league outside of what we watched in Auburn?
The big one was Tennessee just absolutely clobbering Arkansas on the glass, because like Arkansas has some size. Jonas Adu is in a small center. Adu Tiero. I don't remember how to say his name.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Yeah,
but like he's not a small dude either. And I mean, Tennessee just smashed them on the glass. So that's I feel like a warning sign for the rest of the league. Like Tennessee might be the most physical team in this conference. That was the big one. I think Vanderbilt winning on the road moved them up in the pecking order a little bit. But other than that, Gabe, like I think we kind of knew going in, it was going to be really difficult to win on the road in this league. and Saturday kind of proved it.
And I would say here's what jumped out to me. First of all, I felt a little bit validated by Oklahoma's performance in Tuscaloosa. I think Oklahoma is a fine team. I think they'll be in the mix for a tournament bid. I do not think they're the number 12 team in the country.
Yeah.
But more than that, I think it's two teams that they have earned a reputation over the last few years for playing incredibly ugly basketball. And so I think because of that, we maybe don't give them the credit they deserve. Mississippi State and Texas A&M are really good basketball teams. They both scored in the 80s. They both won. Mississippi State beat South Carolina by 35. A&M was actually down early to Texas and then beat them by 20. And I'm not sure Texas is very good this year, but A&M is I think Texas A&M is Final Four good. I'm not sure whether I would put Mississippi State in that category yet, but I think A&M could be.
Yeah, I felt bad because in my rankings this week, we do the weekly SEC poll, and I dropped them both a spot, and it was only because they didn't play anyone as good as Florida.
Right?
It was just I had my hand forced because I couldn't really drop Florida below them, but I had to move Kentucky up. And so, I agree with you. Both of those teams are really, really good. I think that there's a pretty clear-cut top 7 in the conference that's rounded out by those two teams. And then everyone else is a pretty far notch below, in my opinion.
So the top 7 are 6 of the teams that are 1-0 there, and then Florida would replace Vanderbilt, I assume. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with that. Danny Ragland had asked, and Bill, if you want to pop it back up, does Mizzou lose any SEC game by more than they lost to Auburn by? So 16.
Do they lose another SEC game by more than 16?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I agree. Sure. I think definitely. I think at Knoxville's a chance. I don't know where they play Mississippi State, but if it's in Mississippi, Missouri plays terribly in the state of Mississippi. They'll lose down there by 24 to somebody.
Yeah, I can definitely see that happening. Let's see. Who are the other road games? Okay, other road games, maybe not. Alabama, they got.
They're at Florida in a week. Florida's pretty good.
Yeah, Florida, I could see that happening. And then Kentucky in the season finale. We'll see how that goes. Kentucky.
Is that here or there?
That's here.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think anybody beats them by 20 at home, but at Alabama can beat anybody in this league by 30 points if they're going well.
Yeah.
Tennessee can too.
Tennessee for sure. Alabama and Kentucky at home, I think that there's a chance just because of how many points they can put on the board.
Yeah. Somebody, Pocket Watch, it said half the SEC has Final Four potential. So I did it this morning. I said, to me, Final Four good are Tennessee, Auburn, Texas A&M, Kentucky, Alabama, Florida. I think there are 6 teams that at this point in the season might be Final Four good.
I was listening to our friend Blake Lavelle earlier today when they were doing their power rankings of the league. And he pointed out that the top 7 we mentioned, ESPN has Mississippi State as the lowest rated, and they're the number 2-3 seed in bracketology.
Yeah.
It is a bloodbath. It's going to be a gauntlet. It's by far the toughest conference in the country. And it's no exaggeration. Literally, the Final Four could be 4 SEC teams.
Yeah. So let's talk about how big. We've talked a lot about what happened last weekend and where we're at in the league. The next 2 games for Missouri, tell me if this is too reactionary. If Missouri does not win these 2 games, they will not make the tournament. You lose either one of these games, I don't think you're a tournament team.
So I'm going to say no, it's not too reactionary. You could make the argument that you lose one of them, you can make it up down the road. But the schedule's not getting easier than these 2 games, right? LSU and
And like,
Vanderbilt.
I think Vandy's a good team. Like, this is not an insult to Vanderbilt. I think they could be a tournament team this year.
Yeah, absolutely. But these are not teams that you can sleepwalk through like you did Alabama State, for instance, right? But at the same time, when you look at kind of the hierarchy of the league, LSU is the only team that lost a road game on Saturday, right? That says something.
Home game, yeah.
Yeah, a home game. Thank you. And Vanderbilt was the only one who won on the road, but it was against LSU. So it's like these are probably bottom half of the conference teams at least.
Yeah.
And to get them at home, I think says that these are must wins specifically.
Right, and that's kind of the point. So we've said 8-10 is the target mark. 8 SEC wins gets Missouri in the tournament, we think, right? Mm-hmm. How many of those wins have to come at home? Like, what home record does Missouri have to realistically have a tournament shot?
So I would say these next two games, they get South Carolina at home, and then they get Oklahoma at home. I think that's one that they should probably need. Ole Miss
at Arkansas at home,
kind of 50-50 Arkansas. So I would say if I would say probably 6.
I agree. I was going to say, if you're going to get to 8 overall, I think you have to have 6 of them at home, because here's why. At Auburn is already a loss.
Yep.
At Florida, let's be realistic, that's probably a loss.
Yeah.
At Mississippi State is very difficult. At Tennessee is probably a loss. Mm-hmm. At Arkansas is tough. At Oklahoma, I mean, there are just so many road games that you're going to have a difficult time winning, that I think any path to 8 wins involves at least 6 of them coming at home. Like, I don't see how you get more than probably 3 on the road in this conference. And that's, again, that is not saying a bad thing about Missouri. That's what this league is.
Right. Yeah, and again, I think it's also too that they get the easier teams at home, right? Like LSU, Vandy, and South Carolina are probably 3 of the bottom 5 or 6 teams in the conference. Yeah. So I think that those 3 specifically you have to win, and then you'll get another 5, and you have to win 3 out of go 3-2 in those games. So it's going to be so much tougher to get the wins on the road than it is at home this year.
So if we're going 6 home wins, they got to get 2 on the road. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to read you the road games. You tell me the 2 you feel best about.
Okay.
Florida, Texas, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Georgia, Arkansas, Vandy, and Oklahoma.
The 2 I would feel best about is probably Texas and Vanderbilt.
I agree.
Texas is pretty underwhelming this year, and then
also you know that place, Drew. Like, that's not a hard place to play. They never really get into it for basketball, from what I've seen. Now, maybe that's a little different when it's TJ Ford or Kevin Durant, right? But for this team, the Irwin Center is not going to be that tough of a place to play.
Is it the Irwin Center anymore?
I don't know, whatever the hell they call it now.
No, because they built a new arena.
Did they get a new one?
It's a new arena, and I haven't been before. It's no longer the Drum.
Okay.
So I don't know what the atmosphere is like in there, but I'm going to guess it's not too much different, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, I would say Texas, Vandy. I would personally throw Georgia in there. Yeah, Breakfast King points out they don't play well. Well, look, Missouri's not losing in the Irwin Center, then, I guarantee that. I would throw Georgia in there because, Georgia's more concerned about 27 guys declaring for the draft than whether they win basketball games right now. And I think Oklahoma is a possibility. I think you've got to win 2 of those 4. Yeah.
And I'm looking at Ken Palm right now. He's got them with a 33% chance in all 4 of those games. And we're saying that they need to win 2.
Right.
He's saying you'll win 1 out of 3, but I don't know about the 4th.
I think, look, Missouri is a much better team than it was last year. We've known that for a while. I think the path to them being a tournament team it's pretty tough, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think in a lot of years, like I think it's telling that the last two times we've talked to Dennis Gates, it is the first week of January, and he is already making a case to the NCAA tournament committee to ignore records. Because I think he knows there are going to be tournament-worthy teams that lose 12 games in this league.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and especially dropping the Illinois game that was very winnable. That could have gotten you ahead by
huge credit.
Yeah. Without that, like, your non-conference record compared to the rest of the league doesn't quite match up the same, and so you have to take care of business in conference play.
What you're really saying here, Drew, is that Kansas is just out here killing Missouri's net rate. Kansas got to start winning some games again, man. And none of this UCF stuff, that didn't count.
Right.
But no, in all seriousness, like the Illinois game at the time, we thought, hey, would have been a pretty good win. Well, all Illinois did the next time out is go out and murder Oregon by 35 on the road. You know, like that wouldn't have been a pretty good win. That would have been an elite win.
Yeah, and that's kind of the reason I'm still pretty optimistic about Mizzou's chances, right? Is because we know they can hang with some of these teams, maybe not the Auburns and the Tennessees of the world, but I think some of these other ones, they're going to be closer than some people might think. And so that's also, Gabe, why I haven't moved them in my rankings, even after the Auburn loss. Same as Arkansas, right? Like I kept both of those teams in the same spot because that's how good Tennessee and Auburn are. I moved Georgia down because Georgia lost to Ole Miss. I moved Texas and LSU down because Vanderbilt picked up a win. But long-term, grand scheme of things, I still think Missouri is probably the 9th, 10th, or 11th best team in this conference, and I think that's still probably good enough to get in. You still got to win the games, but I still have kind of liked what I've seen aside from the Auburn game.
So I kind of want to finish up with this then. What is more, like you said, Missouri can hang with most teams, and like, look, on the right day, like I wouldn't be shocked if Alabama came here and Missouri gave them a game and maybe even beat them. I wouldn't be shocked if Missouri beat Kentucky here, right? I'd be pretty shocked if they go to Tennessee and win. But point being, like they're capable of winning a game like that because they already beat Kansas and could have beat Illinois, so they've proven that. What is more important, in your opinion, for this team to do? To win one of those, to win whether it's Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, whatever, like have one of those, oh my God, didn't see that coming wins, or to avoid like the Vanderbilt LSU at home loss this week?
The latter. Like you got to avoid the losses.
Because those like losses to those teams we're talking about can help you. Like those are Missouri's rankings went up after losing by 16 points at Auburn. In college basketball, that doesn't kill you to lose those games.
Right.
Losing at home to LSU really hurts you.
Yeah. And you think back 2 years ago, that was kind of the main selling point of Mizzou's resume was they had 0 bad losses. They only had losses against quad 1 and 2 teams. And then they were something like 15-0 against quad 3 and 4. So, especially with the resume that they have right now, where kind of Kansas and California are your only 2 big wins, you mainly just need to avoid the bad losses, like you talked about.
And because even if you just pick off wins against some of the middle of the SEC, like somebody pointed out on the message board, Vanderbilt is like 1 spot away from being a quad 1 win. And we're sitting here talking about it as a game Missouri absolutely cannot lose, right? So, but the point is, I don't know, they've got 18 SEC games. I'm going to guess, I don't know what, probably 12 of those are quad 1 games, maybe more.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Maybe even 15 or not.
Yeah, so if you can just go like 6-9 against, like, you're going to have 7 quad one wins. There aren't going to be that many teams outside the SEC that have 7 quad one wins at the end of the year, I don't think.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, Drew, here's what I've been fearing, like, legitimately kept me up at night thinking about this last night. 8:00 game tomorrow night. We got to walk down that hill at like 11:45 in negative-degree wind chill weather. Mm-hmm. I'm extremely unhappy about this, man. We got to change this 8:00 stuff.
It's very rude of the SEC, just like super inconsiderate. And imagine if we were on the East Coast and this was a 9 p.m. game.
I couldn't live in the Eastern time zone, man. I lived for a few years in the Mountain time zone in Rapid City, South Dakota. Elite sports time zone. Like, people forget the Mountain time zone exists, but 11 a.m. Sunday football games, 10 a.m. Saturday football games, incredible time zone for a sports game.
I believe it. Yeah.
And the games are over at a reasonable time. Like, you're never up at midnight watching a game.
Yeah, that sounds nice. Well, can't relate.
Yeah. Speaking of bad times leaving games, we haven't mentioned this. I wrote a story on it earlier today. Missouri got diverted to St. Louis on the way back from Auburn. They just got back into town sometime late this morning. Mm-hmm. Now, look, I'm sure that Dennis Gates found a place for them to practice in St. Louis. I'm sure they did some film study. This can't be a thing that's brought up tomorrow night as well. You got to understand. I mean, we had a tough time getting home. LSU just flew in this afternoon. So, like, I wrote the story because I think it's an interesting thing. In no way do I think it should impact tomorrow night's game.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I don't have any experience of having a flight diverted, to be fair. So I that's another thing I can't relate to. But yeah, like, travel stuff happens, So this is a must-win game, regardless of how long they were in St. Louis. And I don't know, like, I am curious to find out, like, how did they practice in St. Louis? Like, right. That's something I'm more interested in. But no, I don't think it should have an impact on the result.
It was pretty interesting, though, on his Zoom last week that Dennis did bring up, like, hey, there's going to be travel things that, like, he knew going to that game there was a chance they weren't getting home. So yeah. I bet they were more prepared for it because, like, I mean, like, my wife and I were supposed to go out of town this weekend and we didn't go because we didn't think we'd be able to get home. So, like, they knew that was a possibility.
Yeah, I was supposed to watch your dog.
Yeah, I know. I can bring him over there if you just want to hang out.
Yeah, please.
Cool. All right, so guys, I appreciate you all hanging out with us. It gave Gerard Hamilton the week off. I know there was some portal stuff and all that, but Gerard's been going, 100 miles an hour since like mid-July at this point. So I gave him a night off. Drew and I had talked basketball on this show. Hoping to have some other possible shows for you outside of our regular Monday night show. Drew and I will do post-game live Saturday after Vanderbilt, not tomorrow night. We love you guys. We do not love you enough to do a post-game show at midnight at Mizzou Arena on a Tuesday. Drew, did you have something you needed to interrupt me on?
Sorry, I just remembered the SEC availability report came out.
Okay.
Only out is Trent Burns. So
okay, so good. Look, and I'm fascinated to watch Dennis Gates with the SEC availability report all year. I mean, I fully expect like 12 maybes at some point. But no, we'll have a post-game show for you guys Saturday after the Vanderbilt game. I'm doing the quick hitters every weekday morning. We'll have another one of those for you. Sean Williams is down in San Antonio. He's covering Mizzou commits in the Navy All-American game. All kinds of stuff for you coming up. Appreciate you hanging out. Once again, thanks to Billy Derrick. He's going to be joining us and making all the pretty things you see on the screen and playing the music and basically making this show way better than just me and Drew staring at a camera, which is what it's mostly been for the last 6 years or so. So appreciate all of you guys doing that. And want to remind you, get in touch with our buddy James Carlton at State Farm Insurance in Webster Groves. You need to live in Missouri or Illinois, but if you do, whether it's life insurance, home insurance, auto insurance, whatever you need, take life insurance off there. I'm not sure that's a thing. It might be. I don't know. But get in touch with James and ask him. If you need something insured, carltoninsurance.net, 314-961-4800. If you tell him we sent you, he's also going to make a little donation to Mizzou's NIL efforts. So appreciate all of you guys hanging out with us tonight. 8 o'clock tip-off tomorrow at Mizzou Arena. Drew and I will be there, and we will talk to you later on. Bye.